Welcome to all of you to this morning's town hall. I would like to acknowledge first that UBC Okanagan is situated in the territory of the Silks Okanagan Nation and their peoples. I would also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many different places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. My name is Ananya Mukherjee Reid, and I'm the Provost and Vice President Academic at UBC's Okanagan campus. We have convened today's town hall for our students so that they can see the people who matter to them perhaps the most, their teachers. We are going through a process of unprecedented change. It has made us fearful, anxious, fatigued, and uncertain. For students, there's a huge anxiety about academic success in the online world. One way is to help alleviate this anxiety and see what that online world may be like. This is what I hope you will see today. We will also hear from you and try to address the concerns that you have. And in this way, my hope is that you will be part of the discussion as we all navigate this new learning environment together. Now, before we proceed, I want to say that I have heard from our students that they're experiencing challenges when trying to register. COVID-19 has given us some unexpected challenges indeed. I assure you that we are actively working to resolve these issues as quickly as possible and as well as possible. And we will keep sending you updates with our progress as we go along. Please bear with us, and I fully understand the challenges that you're going through. So without further ado, let me introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Heather Barringer. Heather is the Associate Provost Learning Services and Chief Librarian at UBC Okanagan, and she is going to help us moderate the panel today. Thank you. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you very much, Professor Mukherjee Reid. Today's town hall is designed for a student audience. So to get a better sense of the students attending today, I would like to post a poll. If you're a student with us today, can you please answer the poll on your screen? I'll give you about 30 seconds or so. Okay, so we've got about 138 who voted. Most of you are in undergraduate year 1, that's about 47% of you. Undergraduate year 2 or 3, 21%. Undergraduate year 4 or 5, 7%. And 25% of those on the poll are graduate students. Thank you very much for taking that. That'll help some of our panelists to answer some of your questions most effectively. So, for the session today, I'm going to invite each of our speakers to provide brief remarks about their topics, and following that, we'll have a question and answer session. To facilitate this discussion today, we'll be using the Q&A function. To ask a question of any of our panelists, just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. Other audience members can also engage by liking the questions they find most interesting. We'll do our best to answer as many of the most popular questions as we can during the Q&A after the formal remarks. First, we're going to hear from faculty on what students can expect in a larger online class. We have 2 UBC faculty members who will speak to this. First, I'd like to invite Mark McLean, Professor of Mathematics, Faculty of Science, UBC Vancouver, followed by Sandy Hilton, Senior Instructor, Faculty of Management, UBC Okanagan. We'll start with Professor McLean's remarks. Professor McLean?
Oh, thank you very much, Heather, and thank you for the invitation today. I've always enjoyed my visits to the Okanagan campus and my relationships with my colleagues there. So it's great to be able to speak to students who will be making, have made a wonderful choice to attend UBC at our Okanagan campus. So I'm a mathematician, and one of my specialties as a teacher is first year. So I have a lot of experience teaching and running our large first year courses. These sometimes are intimidating to students since UBC courses can have larger enrollments than a typical high school course does. On the other hand, I'm excited about, in fact, our online experiment for the fall. I'm going to call it an experiment because we will have an opportunity, in fact, to break down these larger classes in ways that we typically do live, but through an online setting. So where we're likely to use Zoom or Collaborate Ultra, which is another video collaboration tool, to have students work in smaller groups on problems, to basically to run our tutoring and to run our office hours. And so we will get a chance to build relationships with groups of students through this now probably familiar to most of you format of using a tool like Zoom. I think for thinking about how do you tackle a math course at university, you know, you're using, of course, the base of mathematics that you've built over your previous education. And then we're going to ask you to stretch it a bit and maybe to learn new ways to think about mathematics. The people teaching you are all mathematicians, which may be a little different than your high school experience. So my colleagues who will be teaching courses are, in fact, people who do mathematics as well as teach it. And that provides, I think, an interesting opportunity for students to tap into the kind of thinking that goes on in mathematics and to have a rich experience learning mathematics with such guides leading their courses. I think the critical thing, of course, is the way we learn mathematics is to do it. So in spite of the fact that there's going to be probably a lot of video, some of it may be asynchronous. That's our fancy term for saying we're going to pre-record it and allow you to access it whenever you wish. And some of that will be synchronous. That's situations like this one where you get to watch and ask questions while the speaker is live. But those are, of course, you know, observational things from your perspective and very important part of your learning. But so are doing problems and engaging with each other and with your instructors around the ideas in the course. And typically we mathematicians like to set very rich problem sets and provide you with feedback on your thinking through that and through the conversations we had. So I'm anticipating for students who will be joining us through our online web-oriented formats in math courses this year that you will have a rich chance and, in fact, probably more opportunities to interact with your faculty members than usual, simply because, for example, for office hours, you don't need to leave the comfort of your own home and walk across campus in the snow or rain. You can just simply turn it on and away we go. So upper year courses, I'm anticipating I'm teaching a third year vector calculus course, whatever that is. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to use some of the visualization tools that are available to me online and so forth to, in fact, build a rich presentation to students, and then also have those great opportunities to work with them in small groups and one or two of them with me to discuss problems. So that's probably where I'll stop this and say that I think this is actually quite exciting for me as well, because I think we're going to learn things that we'll take forward even when we're back in person and live on campus. There will be things we learn about this and resources we build that will be valuable for students well into the future.
Thanks so much, Professor McLean. Can I move on to?
You can move on. Yeah, sorry, I should have given you a wave or something. we have to learn our signals here. You know, I don't know, for those who TikTok or something, there's probably some fancy set of hand signals that will say that who's up next and what you should say.
Thanks so much, and we will see you in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Professor Hilton, would you like to provide your comments?
Sure. Thank you very much. I've got a few slides I want to share as well that I'll sort of walk us through, get those up. Terrific. And the slides are very simple, so no memorization required here. First, I just want to say to the 47% of you that are first-year students, a huge welcome. I teach a large first-year management course, so I will see some of you in September or in January. I look forward to that. One thing I wanted to address today is that we understand the importance of what I call the full footprint of a class. Students and professors commonly talk about a class being 3 hours a week, the traditional or usual time where students and professors meet face-to-face in a physical classroom. But that is only one part of the overall time commitment of a course. The reality is that to do reasonably well, students are expected to spend between 2 and 3 hours for each hour of class time. So for a 3-hour class per week, that self-directed study time is really 6 to 9 hours per week. Let's take the conservative end of that and assume that students are spending 6 hours per course per week preparing and studying. That's the blue chunk over on the slide. Add in a quick 10 to 15 minutes for an office visit, email to the professor, or an after-class question, and you get a sense of what I refer to again as the whole footprint of a course for a usual week. And what I want to do is walk you through just quickly here in about 4 minutes how that compares in a face-to-face setting versus an online setting. We can change the slide, please. So when I'm teaching a large class, 200, 300, 400 students, the 3 hours of class time will consist of passive learning time, basically lecturing where I'm introducing or explaining concepts, plus active learning time where the students will be working on problems in class. I'll be demonstrating critical thinking and problem-solving techniques. Time where students will be working with their small group of peers that are in close proximity in the classroom, and often we'll have large group discussions where students in one corner of the large classroom are debating topics with someone in the complete opposite end of the classroom, back and forth. And well, that sometimes seems like chaos to someone who walks in halfway through a class. That works quite well even in classes of 300 students. Let's change the slide. Now let's think about that 6 hours. So this, as a student, is really the important part, and this is unstructured study time. So as a professor, what do I expect students to be doing, even in a face-to-face class, in that 6 hours of time outside of class? I give a lot of thought to that 6 hours and try to deliberately structure activities and guide the students so that you know how to use that time effectively. And this is fairly traditional stuff. So it will include things like preparation, reading a textbook section, working on some problems individually or in a small group of your peers, reviewing your notes from previous class, working on your projects, meeting with groups of projects or groups of students that would put you in, contributing to discussion boards, or studying for exams. So that 6 hours of self-directed study time will look different for every course, will look different every week, but those are the types of activities that we generally expect you to be doing outside of class time. Now let's shift slides and we'll take a look at what an online course can look like, again, for that full week footprint. So much of the weekly structure actually stays the same, and I think that's the key takeaway that I want students to leave here today with. That the bulk of the time for your course per week actually looks the same, whether it's face-to-face or online. That 6 to 9 hours of study time is still there. That 6 to 9 hours is still relatively unstructured and requires you to be doing things on your own, just like it did whether you were taking a face-to-face class and living on residence or living anywhere else. That time was really up to you. The 3 hours of traditional face-to-face class time obviously changes. Now, for my large class, I'm going to be breaking that 3 hours down into roughly 45 minutes to an hour of synchronous class time. And as Mark explained, synchronous class time is much like this. It's live. Students and the professor are online at the same time. Synchronous sessions can obviously be difficult for students spread across the world. So I'll be recording those, much like we're recording this. So any student can review that at any time afterwards. Synchronous time is very valuable. It requires people to be online at the same time. So we have to use that for the most valuable activities and really build it in such a way that it drives interaction with the professor and the students, between students and other students. So that will be used for discussion, dialogue, debate, creating ideas, debating concepts. The other 2 hours of class time, roughly, will be asynchronous learning. And as Mark was describing, that's essentially video capture and other tools where I'm pre-recording some activities. And I want to look at that in a little bit more detail, because that's really the sort of big question that I think students have. So my final slide next there shows you a little bit what that asynchronous 2 hours roughly per week can look like. So first thing I'm going to say, and I'm sure Mark will agree with this, asynchronous learning is not going to be 2 hours of recording of me talking. That would put anyone to sleep within about 3 minutes. But instead, that 2 hours is broken down into a series of topics and modules. And in many ways, it looks very much like what I do in a face-to-face class. So there will be short 7 to 9 minute videos where I introduce a concept, then separate online components where I show you how to solve particularly difficult problems. I'll continue to use group work in my large class. Teamwork and leadership are key learning outcomes in the management program, and learning how to work effectively in groups is an important skill. Now, learning how to work in groups in a face-to-face setting is different than learning how to work in groups in an online setting. But I think with the world shifting so dramatically over the last 6 months, we also have to learn that skill set of how to work effectively in online groups. And who knows how important that's going to be over the next couple of years. So for our graduates, we have to give you the skill set and the opportunity to work in those online groups. So I will continue to be doing that. So much like those small peer group discussions I use in a face-to-face class, the student groups will be discussing the key concepts, submitting their thoughts, ideas on that, and then contributing on the larger stage via discussion board posts or perhaps even video clip submissions. Now, just in closing here, there are certainly advantages of well-designed asynchronous learning. As Mark points out, there's a number of very valuable tools that we can use to demonstrate concepts that we can't necessarily use in a face-to-face class. So for instance, instead of taking a large dose of lecturing once or twice a week, we can spread out the key concepts into smaller chunks of roughly, say, 30 to 40 minutes for students to work on and absorb. Even more importantly, and we hear this commonly from students, students can proceed at their own pace. Some students want to go faster. Some students want to go slower. Some students want to review the content multiple times. With that asynchronous setting, we can definitely do that. Oh, and that little green slice that was up on the slide, that's sort of the office hours and contact between professor and student. That's still available. As Mark explains, whether it's email, phone, Skype, Zoom, whatever it is, I will be available for students, and I can be available virtually any time of the day to contact with you. I'll be online for very specific periods, basically hanging out much like I would in my physical office, so students can drop in virtually and chat. So just wrapping up here, I think the key thing to take away is that even a face-to-face university class requires students to do a large portion of the work on their own time, the 6 to 9 hours per week of self-study time. That's not different in an online course. I actually think that a well-designed online course helps structure that 6 to 9 hours for a student much better than most face-to-face classes. For my large class, I guarantee that any student will not be able to say, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, or ask the question, what should I do next? That will be very evident and very clear to any student in my course. Yes, online learning requires motivation, time, and energy, but those aren't new attributes of a successful university student. Thank you, Heather. I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks so much, Professor Hilton. We're going to change gears a little bit now, and I would like to invite Aisha Ravindran, Senior Instructor, English and Cultural Studies from the Faculty of Creative and Critical Studies, to speak to what a smaller online class experience might look like, say 40 students or less. Professor Ravindran?
Thanks, Heather. Hello, everyone. I will briefly cover expectations of the small classroom online experience, and as there will be quite a bit of diversity in how each course is designed based on the program and the instructor, do expect some overlapping similarities as well as differences in each of your courses. So let's move on to the next slide. Yes, great. So Professors McLean and Hilton have already provided you with the terminology, but I thought it would be a good idea for you to have a better understanding of what these terms mean in an online setting. Some of you may have already experienced these modes, but for many of you, this may be an entirely new experience. So the face-to-face experience is the traditional classroom experience. You have a physical classroom scheduled during a specific time of day with classmates and instructors interacting in real time and in real space. Synchronous learning is similar to the face-to-face context, but takes place online in real time and in virtual space. You are provided with a link to enter your online classroom. The lecturer delivers the class live. You engage in discussion and collaborations by working in assigned online groups, what are called breakout groups, and you can ask questions and respond immediately to your peers and instructor. So with asynchronous learning, your instructors may record the lecture, post videos or podcasts of a specific topic, and interactions and discussions are not immediate, but are generally posted on online discussion boards. You can watch or hear the content that is posted at any time and learn at your own pace. Then there is the blended model, which is a combination of both kinds of learning, synchronous as well as asynchronous. And there's a greater possibility that smaller classes would follow either the synchronous or blended models as they grant greater opportunities for interaction. So let me give you an example of what I do in my own online class for a first-year writing course following the blended model. Let's assume the topic of the session is writing a summary. I would have posted my lecture in small chunks on summary writing asynchronously on Canvas. Students will watch this lecture online at their own pace and time. And during the class session held synchronously, we would review the main points together, discuss fuzzy areas if any, and then move to the class activity. So we would read a short paragraph in class together, identify the main points and subpoints on an online whiteboard or on Google Docs, and then move to smaller groups and breakout rooms to prepare a collaborative summary of the paragraph in each group. The class would conclude with a discussion of all the summaries prepared by the groups. So how can you prepare to be successful in your online course? And here are some of the suggestions that were offered by my colleagues. And they would apply, I would think, to all online classes, large or small, but they are even more relevant in small class settings where active participation is encouraged. So the most important things to keep in mind: make sure you have sufficient awareness of technology to easily navigate the online context. The preferred modes on campus, as you must have heard, are Zoom and Collaborate Ultra through Canvas. Be prepared with all the required materials before the semester begins. Review them before every class, and be ready to share and actively participate with your peers and your instructor so that you can experience community, relationships, and friendships online just as you would have done face-to-face. How will your professors support your learning? My colleagues unanimously emphasize the significance of communication. Meet with your professor regularly during online office hours and don't feel reluctant to share your concerns. The professor may not always be intuitive and will be able to support your learning more significantly when you share your experiences and concerns or barriers of any. They are doing everything they can to make your classes online a rich and valuable experience. The mode may have changed, but not the objectives. I'd like to end the presentation with quotes from two of my colleagues that display the varied considerations that guide their course design in order to support your learning. And I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have in the Q&A. Over to you, Heather, to continue the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Professor Ravindra. Next, we're going to hear from Stephen McNeil, Associate Professor, Chemistry, Irving K. Barber School of Arts and Sciences, and Tamara Freeman, who is clearly first, Tamara, Instructor, Chemistry, Irving K. Barber School of Arts and Sciences. They will present on what labs could look like in an online delivery environment, which I know is a question that many students are asking right now. First, I'll invite Professor Freeman to speak, and she will then be followed directly by Professor McNeil. Over to you, Professor Freeman.
Thank you, Heather. So yes, I've been following the chat and I'm hoping I can address your concerns in the short term. I'd like to start with, I am the first year coordinator for the incoming first year students into our science program in chemistry. So welcome to all the first year students that are here today. I am currently at home working with 2 young children. So what I would also like to say, as I echo some of the other comments from our previous speaker, Aisha, is that we are working from a place of compassion. We know that what you are going through right now is not what you're used to and not what you would have expected to come into university with. So what we're hoping to do is to blend really nicely this asynchronous and synchronous lab experience. So some things that I think you can expect. There will be some traditional elements. We'll have you doing some pre-lab work. You'll meet with your TAs, you'll work through problems, traditional lab-based problems, and we'll expect some form of a post-lab report. But as I can echo Professor Mark's comments, I have been incredibly excited about going into this online system because what we've been able to identify is that there are transferable skills that we can start to build on more strongly that might not have been as evident when you're in the lab trying to rush through an experiment. So what we're also hoping to do is to build stronger scientific writing skills, data set manipulation. We'll still focus on concepts, but what you might see then, instead of you manipulating the glassware and technology, is that you'll watch a video where we explain what's happening. I know this isn't ideal, and I know that we would like to be in the lab doing those hands-on things, but as a short-term stall, we'll get you there. So let's see, there was a few more notes I made. Yes, for those technical skills that you might be worried about missing in this incoming year, or even in your second or third year courses if they are not face-to-face, is that we've already planned for backup situations where we can offer boot camps of really necessary skills when you get into your future courses. So I just want to reiterate a blend of synchronous, asynchronous situations. We're working from a place of compassion. You'll have lots of opportunity to speak to your teaching assistants, to your lab manager, to the technicians, to me, myself. Because I am the first year coordinator, I am intimately involved with the first year science labs. So lots of opportunity for communication, and we will make sure that as you move forward in your degree, that you will be getting the skills that are required, and we will do everything we can to put you with your best foot forward. So I think with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Steve McNeil, for your upper level situations.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steve McNeil. I teach a second-year chemistry course on molecular structure and bonding, where we actually use computational chemistry to give us some insight into how atoms come together to form molecules and how the shapes of those molecules give rise to their physical and chemical properties. And so I thought I would just demonstrate sort of what that can look like. And it's really not that different in this new online environment than what I've been doing all along. You go into your course management system, you click on a link, it takes you to a page that looks kind of like this one. And from here, we can simply open up a little periodic table and we can build ourselves a little molecule. We'll make an ammonia molecule today. I'll turn that around, put the other hydrogen atom here. Let's clean that up a little bit. That's not a terrible structure of ammonia, but it's not as good as it could be. What I'm going to do is create a little file and send that job file called a geometry optimization, which is going to do a lot of really complicated mathematics. It's going to solve the Schrodinger wave equation over and over and over and over and over again to come up with an answer to what ammonia should look like. You can't see it, but we just send information to a computer in a different building in a different city that's now thinking really hard about this problem. And in less time than it takes me to explain that, the reaction is done, the experiment's done, and we can open up this file and see what it looks like. And it says, well, ammonia looks like this. It has a pyramidal structure, and you can say, well, what are the bond lengths in ammonia? The bond lengths in ammonia are supposed to be maybe about an angstrom long. The bond angles are supposed to be maybe about 107 degrees. It turns out that those are really close to the actual experimental properties in ammonia. You can scroll down and there's a lot of information that the computer has told you about this molecule, including something about the dipole moment, which points up through the center of the compound. But then we can do something a little bit more sophisticated, and we can say another type of calculation, another job called a molecular orbital calculation. And what this will do is, again, a lot of really terrible mathematics that you don't want to think about that hard, but it's going to figure out what the energies of all of the electrons in that molecule are like, and it's going to figure out what the shape and the disposition of the electrons across that molecule are like. And this is really valuable. It can tell us about patterns of reactivity and patterns of physical behavior for these compounds. And again, really fast, less time than it took me to explain to you what was actually happening. And now when I scroll down, there's a lot more information about the energies and the occupancy of some of these orbitals, and we can get pictures of them. So here's an electron cloud in the ammonia molecule. This particular electron cloud is oriented primarily pointing out this way, away from the nitrogen, but there's some on the back. We can look at a different cloud. This is a very different pattern. And so the patterns and the shapes of these electron clouds tells us something about the reactivity and can give us a lot of insight into what these molecules do. This is the kind of data that you can collect very quickly and very easily in an online environment because it's entirely computational. From there, what you would do, instead of writing this down physically in a notebook the way you might in a face-to-face lab, we give you a PDF file, and it's a digital form that you could fill out, and you go, oh yeah, okay, so that bond length was 1 angstrom, and that bond angle was 107 degrees, and you record your data in this file, and then maybe answer some questions about what that data might mean and interpret that and rationalize that in terms of the concepts that we're trying to promote. You save this digital file, you upload it back into the course management system. A TA grades that file in the course management system, sends it back to you. So the entire arc of the experiment, generating the experiment, collecting the data, recording the data, analyzing that, submitting that information as your assignment, and then having it graded and the feedback come back to you, that all happens online. That all happens seamlessly in the course management system. It's entirely digital. And even in what we're traditionally experimental labs, we're working very hard to find ways to capture as many of the learning objectives as we could, but move it into this digital form and give it to you in a way that you can do it from home and you can do it from anywhere and you can do it in whatever time zone you're in without missing out on any of those learning activities or building any of those skills. That's my time. Back to Heather.
Thanks very much, Professor McNeil and Professor Freeman. At this time, we're going to move the conversation to a student perspective. We're going to hear first from Dalton Baird, who is a fourth-year computer science major at UBC Okanagan. Thanks for joining us today, Dalton. Dalton's going to provide his impressions of taking online courses.
Thank you, Heather. Hello, everyone. So what is it like to learn online from a student's perspective? The short answer to this is that it is much different than in-person classes. As you know, I'm a fourth-year computer science major and data science minor, And up until this spring, I've taken all my classes in the traditional face-to-face format. Face-to-face courses are great for me as I really value the support of being able to ask the instructor questions before, during, or after the lectures. Being able to go to an instructor's office hours or book appointments also helps learning feel more personalized and even allows me to get to know the instructor better. But the personalization of education does not end with face-to-face courses. It is even more prevalent in online courses. The advancement of technology up to this point has brought forth amazing software that makes online learning much easier than you might think. Video conferencing technologies such as Zoom and Collaborate Ultra allow for the instructor to teach concepts live and engage the students on the topic just like face-to-face lectures. But in this case, everything is on your screen. This completely eliminates the issue of whiteboards and projector screens not being visible from the back of large lecture halls. These video conferencing technologies also allow you to maintain those personalized meetings with instructors through features such as direct messages and breakout rooms. This means you get to experience face-to-face lectures without having to leave your bedroom. This summer, I've enrolled in 2 online courses. I've just completed one of my required degree courses, and I'm currently taking my capstone project. For the required course, the instructor used a video lecture format in which they recorded their lecture beforehand and posted them in the course modules on Canvas. This allowed me to watch the video lecture whenever it was convenient, which for me differed from week to week. This flexibility made the course very straightforward, and I was able to navigate it with very little help from the instructor. When I did need help or have questions, the instructor usually responded to emails within a couple of hours, which was very helpful. The course also had weekly quizzes to ensure that you're keeping up with the content. These quizzes were on a software called Respondus Lockdown Browser, or RLB for short. Although the name may sound intimidating, I can assure you that it's not. It is simply a browser that stops you from using other programs or browser tabs while completing the quiz. This ensures that students in an online course environment maintain their academic integrity throughout the duration of the course. Given that it is a new technology at UBC, RLB did have some issues at first, but those problems were quickly fixed by the people at the Center for Teaching and Learning, or CTL, and now RLB is almost indistinguishable from any other browser such as Google Chrome. We also had to complete a group project in this course. Now, you may be wondering how a group project is possible while maintaining social distancing, but using communication technologies such as FaceTime, Discord, or Zoom, we were able to talk both face-to-face and audio only, depending on what was required for the meeting. For my capstone project, we use meeting software frequently as well. Once per week, we meet with our professor on Zoom to discuss the progress that we have made and what is on the agenda for the following week. The ability to have all 5 group members in a video call, despite the fact that some of our group members are in different continents, is an amazing advancement in education. The ability to share our screens to show our instructor our prototypes and our code allows us to collaborate in ways that we were unable to in a face-to-face manner. As a team, we message each other on a daily basis using a program called Slack and ask each other questions and plan future meetings. We also meet as a group twice per week, also on Zoom, to assign tasks, troubleshoot problems, and discuss visuals for our project, and this really improves our workflow. The one thing that is missing from the university experience that I've not yet mentioned is the social aspect, which we've become so accustomed to. For this, my friends and I have resorted to use of different online entertainment platforms such as Netflix Party, where we're able to watch our favorite movies and shows together, playing computer games together, or even just talking on some of the communication platforms that I've previously mentioned. This helps supplement the socializing aspect of university, which is so important to maintain mental health and well-being. So to answer the question, what is it like to learn online? It is a whole new way to experience higher education, and I think we've just scratched the surface. So thank you for your time, and I'll send it back to you, Heather.
Thanks very much, Dalton. We're also going to hear about the student experience from one of our alumna. Jennifer Kerr completed the Master of Education Technology program at UBC. She's also an employee of UBC in the role of Manager of Student Services. Jennifer?
Thanks, Heather. And Dalton, that was great. You mentioned one of my most favorite online tools, which was Slack. Everybody needs to go download that right now. Get it on your phone, get it on your laptop. It's amazing. So yes, I just graduated with my Master's in Education Technology. It's a course-based master's program. And the purpose of it was basically to design, how to design, learn, collaborate, deliver knowledge within a virtual environment. So basically I chose a degree that was based in COVID times, literally, which might say something. Anyways, fantastic interesting way to learn. And the key to online learning is really being open to any experience possible. So the most important thing I learned in my Coles notes that I'm going to deliver to you is that something is going to go sideways at some point for you, for your professor, for your classmates, and you are going to have to be ready just to adapt. And the nice thing is with COVID is that we have this level playing field now where there's so many opportunities for us to connect in a way that we probably wouldn't have had we had the traditional face-to-face. So it actually is a very exciting time. And I think if you're open to all of these challenges, that you'll have a really great experience. And I'm super stoked listening to all of the professors who spoke. We are very fortunate to have all of you on our campus. I mean, the level of compassion and excitement and interest, it was just very inspiring. So I think our students are in good hands. So yes, be prepared for something to go wrong in the middle of your first, second, third presentation. You can't connect with your classmates. Somebody puts a pizza in a cardboard box in the oven, starts a kitchen fire, the entire building is evacuated right in the middle of some live seminar. So yes, that happened and it was very enjoyable and you just got to roll with it. So just be ready to adapt, be kind to yourself and be kind to those that you're working with. You're working with students in other cultures, time zones, coming from different backgrounds, different opportunities for access to technology, different demands, you know, working spouses, single parents, children, grandparents. So just be generous and be kind to those that you're working with and recognize that we're all doing the best that we can with what we have right now. The other thing to emphasize is communicate, communicate, communicate. Dalton mentioned Slack for keeping in touch with your classmates. That is an incredible tool, but your professors are there as well, and they're learning at the same time that you are with all of these new adaptations. You run into problems, you're feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, just reach out to them. Don't leave it to the last minute, right before your final exam or right before a deadline to reach out and connect to them. So that's all the soft stuff. Hard stuff, really quick here, I got 45 seconds. If there's a general Q&A page inside of your course platform, take advantage of it. Don't be afraid to ask that first question about, I don't understand this, this doesn't make sense. I guarantee the rest of your class will be chiming in saying, thank you so much. We had no idea what was going on. I, as you can tell, probably come from an ADHD point of learning, so not having that oral stimulation was really difficult for me. So figure out some sort of tips and tricks that worked for you. I literally would set myself 25-minute timer, and then I was allowed to watch a horror movie for 5 minutes and then jump right back in again. Super quick, download PDFs when you have those electronic periodicals. Put them into an editable, anyways, you guys know what I mean. And as you're reading it, you just kind of pretend basically that the person who's writing it is speaking to you. So take those moments to insert your comments like, what is this person talking about? I totally disagree with it. Use those to just kind of spark your thinking and your connections. And that will really help lay a base for later assignments when you have to go back into these multitude of readings and pull out some pieces for your own projects or whatever it may be. Anyways, I think I'm done. I hope I haven't talked over. Thank you so much, Heather. Thanks for the opportunity. I think this is going to be an incredible adventure, and I think everybody's just going to kill it. Bye.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, for your motivational approach to that topic. We're now going to learn a little bit more about what graduate students can expect in online classes this fall. I'd like to invite Judy Gillespie, who's Associate Professor in the School of Social Work, Faculty of Health and Social Development, to speak a little bit to this topic.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I think I want to emphasize that you've heard a lot of great ideas, information, and tips from the speakers who've gone before me. So I won't have a lot to add, but a few things that I will focus on. Next slide, please. So I've talked both in-class and online courses at undergraduate as well as graduate levels. Currently, I'm teaching and supervising only graduate and doctoral students. Next slide. So students often think that the major difference between undergraduate and graduate education is more, that there's more readings, there's more exams or assignments are longer, take more time. I want to emphasize that there are two primary goals for graduate education. First, to deepen and focus your understanding in a specific area. And second, to enhance your independent academic skills. So think of your academic education as a funnel. Undergraduate education can provide you with a broad base of academic skills and broad understanding in a given field. The goal of graduate education is to strengthen and to deepen those skills and that understanding. Next slide. So you've already heard a lot about synchronous and asynchronous learning components. And so just like in-class courses, online graduate courses consist of both synchronous and asynchronous learning components. And as Professor Hilton mentioned, most in-class courses still require a lot of asynchronous learning. And that's true in graduate courses as well. In a graduate course, your asynchronous preparation helps you to make an active contribution, not just to your own learning, but especially to your colleagues' learning. In my online classes, synchronous learning tends to focus on dialogue, debate, and skill development that helps everybody to reflect on the course materials more deeply. And often synchronous learning in my online graduate courses is focused in small group work, some classwork, but a lot of small group work. Next slide, please. So returning to the two primary goals of graduate education. Enhancing your independent academic skills means that you are likely to have some input into your learning, including maybe selecting course materials, and you'll be asked to select course materials that will contribute to the learning of the whole group, the whole class. Input into the structure, the content of assignments. And in an online course, in an in-class course, this often occurs through discussion in the classroom, but in an online course, that will often occur through discussion boards or group emails that you'll be contributing to. Question and answer boards, as Jen mentioned. And also, enhancing your independent skills means that there will often be fewer rules about assignments and more expectation that you're developing your capacity to judge strong academic work. So, for example, in my class and my online courses, I don't provide minimum or maximum word counts or number of pages for assignments. I don't say, you know, somewhere between 6 and 8 pages or 10 and 20 pages. I ask instead for high quality writing that demonstrates a strong grasp of the subject matter. And that's what I assess. I assess your capacity to figure that out. I don't include minimum or maximum numbers of academic references. Instead, I ask you to figure out relevant sources and to include those. And again, I'm assessing your capacity to judge that. I ask you to effectively collaborate and contribute to collective learning through discussions and small group work. And I assess your capacity to do that. And in an online environment, of course, this changes a bit because it requires a lot of coordination with other students. Deepening your understanding in a particular subject area means that often the readings are more challenging. And so you're going to need to plan for more time to read and reflect on the readings. Also higher expectations of critical thinking, that you come to class well prepared and your discussions, your posts, your assignments reflect this preparation. Next slide. Oh, sorry, we're already on the next slide. Okay, last slide. Online learning requires you to be proficient with technology, and I can't emphasize enough the importance of learning the technology that you will be using and identifying and troubleshooting problems ahead of time. In my online course last term, there were a lot of students that identified not having done online learning before, and so not sure about how to use the technology, the pre-recorded lectures, and so on. And so this cost them time and stress. So really work with that technology ahead of time. And then also, and this has really been mentioned, be collaborative, reflective, and flexible. And that flexibility is so important in an online environment when, as Jen said, people are working from different time zones. They may have different demands on their time, young children at home with them, or juggling jobs, so on and so forth. Thanks, Sue-Ann. Back to you, Heather.
Thanks, Professor Gillespie. We have now reached the part of our program where we're going to open the floor to questions, and we have lots of questions. Let me just remind you that to ask a question of any of our panelists, you can click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. You can also engage by liking the questions you find more interesting, and that will help move them to the top of the list. There are a number of questions that I've been scanning that have something to do with scheduling or some really individual student situations. I just want to signal that we probably won't be able to answer all of those questions here today, but that we'll definitely try to answer the ones that we can, and that at the end of the presentation there will be a link displayed to a website with lots of student information and contacts so that you can discuss your specific situations with an academic advisor or with the right people to help you find answers. So I'm going to get started with the most popular question, which started very early on, and perhaps also indicate that we have a few new folks who have agreed to join our panel. In fact, I'm going to direct this first question, which is about how to get books for desired majors, to one of those new panelists. Michelle Loudon, who's our Associate Vice President Students, is here, and she has agreed to stick handle that question. Michelle?
Hi everyone, yes, it's actually a pretty simple answer. Once you get your course schedule, it'll indicate what books you require. You'll want to go to the UBC bookstore. So most of you will get there just by Googling the UBC bookstore. And on the top tab, there is a spot called textbooks. You can hit that tab and down will come an indicator for UBC Okanagan. And then you can put in the different courses that you might have in the different terms, and it will tell you the books that you require in there. If you have any other questions, just put them in.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I'll also signal that we have a few others who have joined us. As I mentioned, Dr. Bryce Treyster is the Dean of the Faculty of Creative and Critical Studies. Jen Jacoby is our Dean Pro Tem of the College of Graduate Studies, and Gino Delabio is Dean of the Irving K. Barber School of Arts and Sciences, also Pro Tem. So, let's move on to the next question. This is a hot topic, and we've heard it a lot. As an international student, I do have concerns about my online classes and the vast time difference between my city and the Okanagan, as attending courses live will change my daily routine. Will there be a form of support for students such as recorded classes? I know we've heard a little bit about this. I wonder if any of our panelists would like to speak a little more about work you're doing around class delivery across time zones. Mark, thanks.
Yes, this is certainly a hot topic of conversation, and there are a number of, I think, approaches people are taking to this. So in my case, certainly the recorded materials will be available on demand from the student. In my experience, having taught live streamed courses from studios in the past, is that students tend to watch a video at about 1.5 times speed, so I sound a little bit like Mickey Mouse, until they hit something hard, and then they stop and they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until it sort of sinks in. So there's some advantage to that online piece. The other piece we're doing is expanding our offerings into the early evening and the early morning, and this captures, in fact, I have a table sitting on my desk that actually has all the time zones in the world and how how we might schedule things in order to deal with students who might be in somewhere like Saudi Arabia or China or India and so forth. So these are certainly things we're thinking about, and you may see, even as you register now, you may see some alterations or additions to schedules as we continue to work out the best way to do that. But that's the range of approaches I'm seeing.
Thanks so much. Dr. McNeil, did you want to answer that question as well?
Yeah, and some context here. I've actually just submitted a paper that my graduate student and I wrote on a quick research study we ran where we sat students down about their online experience when we moved to emergency remote teaching in March. We simply asked the students how that experience went and what aspects of the online learning that they were engaged in really contributed or didn't contribute to them succeeding in their courses. And one thing that really kind of surprised us, because we specifically asked about synchronous versus asynchronous learning, some students really appreciated having the regularly scheduled class time where they could show up with other students and interact with their professor. Some students ignored that entirely and really appreciated having access to a downloaded lecture that they could review and repeat and go back at their own pace and work with when they had the time. And some students found that both were really, really important, and having that option and having that synergy really contributed. And so I think what we're seeing, certainly I'm going to be doing this, and I know many of my colleagues are going to be doing this, we're going to be doing both. I'm going to be recording my lectures live, but they're all going to be recorded and they're all going to be available after the fact. And certainly we're all very aware that not everyone is in our time zone, and that we have to be thinking carefully about the activities that we do in a synchronous time frame, because there will be some students who simply can't attend at those specific times because we're not all going to be living in the same place. So you know, there are pros and cons to both approaches. I think the work that I've seen and what my students have told me is that I need to do both, because there are students who prefer each one of those modes, but we're all aware that, yeah, there are students in other time zones that simply can't show up at a specific time to take part in the synchronous activities. Everything's going to be recorded. Everything's going to be available for download. All the information you need to succeed in the class will be available in that online environment, and you can access it whenever and wherever you are.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. I think Dean Traister also had his hand up.
I did. I raised my hand. Beware, the deans have arrived. I just wanted to agree with everything my colleagues Stephen McNeil and Mark McLean are saying. Just super quick, if either of them had been my professors, I might not have become an English major, but it's a different story. I just want to say that when I was teaching a course in the last term, I ended up doing both asynchronous and synchronous course delivery. And I recorded all of the synchronous, that is to say, scheduled course time classes so that students could review them. Just the one tip I would offer, in addition to all the good advice I'm hearing so far, is it's worth reaching out to your actual professors once you signed up for classes and just indicating to them what your situation is and trying to get a sense. And all of your professors will be very responsive, I guarantee it, to such questions. You know, and so that they know kind of where you're coming from and what your concerns are, and they'll be able to give you a sense of what their plans are or what they're working on in terms of the fall delivery, in terms of the time zone piece. It's a great question, and everyone is super mindful of how we're going to equitably offer the same learning opportunities to all students who are doing us the honor of joining us in the fall.
Thanks so much for that, Dean Traister. Professor Freeman, did you have your hand up, possibly?
I did. I just wanted to follow up with all the comments that have been stated. I will be teaching 800 students in a scheduled single section. So I also wanted to just put forward that, again, along the lines of knowing that both synchronous and asynchronous works, I will be reaching out to my students within the first week of class and discussing time zones and putting forward timeframes. The beautiful thing about being able to work from home now is that regardless of my childcare situation, I can host office hours at 9 o'clock at night to accommodate students in different time zones. And I plan wholeheartedly to do that. So just to alleviate those fears, and echoing everything that everyone has said, we know, we care, and we will make ourselves available to the best of our ability.
I don't want to put any of the panelists really on the spot directly, but I had a really great question offline, actually, that someone sent me. And, you know, every question is a great question, who said, the terms synchronous and asynchronous, could somebody actually define those clearly? Because we use the words a lot in this context of online learning. And it was a question from someone just asking, should I just have a definition from somebody on its own? Because that would really help me. Does anybody maybe want to thanks, Professor Hilton, that would be great.
Yeah, so the terms simply mean how people are gathering. So asynchronous would be that we are online but at different times. Synchronous is a Latin word for something, I'm not sure exactly what, and the A in front of it is the opposite of that. So synchronous means that we are essentially in the same room or the same virtual setting at the same time. And asynchronous would mean that we're in the same room or online at different times. So a conversation, whether it's on the phone or on Zoom or face-to-face, is synchronous. When you write an email and I respond either 10 minutes later or 10 hours later, that's asynchronous. So asynchronous learning is something in most cases where like a video that I've captured a day ahead or a month ahead and put it online and you're watching it and I don't necessarily have to be online at the same time. That would be asynchronous learning.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. And thanks to the offline questioner. Hope that answers your question. The next question that's risen to the top is a great one, and I'm sure a concern for lots of students. How will year-end examinations be conducted? That's pretty tough question. Anybody want to field that one first? Thank you, Professor Freeman.
So what I can say about year-end examinations is that we're currently exploring best practices for hosting those. In the previous semester where it was an emergency remote situation, for the first year chemistry course, what I did was part of the exam was online with simple multiple choice and short answer questions. And then part of the exam was a document that students could download and they could fill it in and then upload it to the examination software. We had an open window of 26 hours, so students could download their exam, work on it at their own time frame. I mentioned to students that it was only going to be a 3-hour exam, so they could find anywhere hours to dedicate those 3 hours and then upload their answer at their own time as well. So there was no strict time frame for getting it done. It was open-ended and it allowed students to work with technology problems. It allowed them to work with environmental stressors, noise, or situations. Practices for those exams, at least at the first year level, to make sure that we're accommodating and that we're helping students show and put forward their best experience.
Anyone else want to talk about an approach to year-end examinations, maybe? Oh, thanks, Professor McLean.
Yeah, this has been an opportunity, I think, for us to even rethink how we assess students in courses. And I'm seeing a lot of conversations where instead of one giant final exam, that we're thinking about alternate ways to assess students. So this has been going on, in fact, before COVID came along. I have colleagues, for example, whose exams are split into 2 pieces. One piece is done in small groups of students. And that's been very effective, frankly, with student learning. I often view that the final exam is actually the most focused moments I will have of a student's attention, and so they should learn something on the exam. That means I have to prepare them for that experience and carefully. But so there are many things that could happen, I think. I'm imagining, for example, not necessarily having an exam worth 50% of the course grade, which is common at the moment, but having maybe more smaller assessments and assessments that are perhaps a little bit different. So there's a bit of creativity in the works, I think, in many people's thinking as to what we might do around exams. So it's not just the logistics of giving such a thing, but even the purpose and and the way we might think about exams.
That's great. Thanks very much. Is there anything else anyone wants to add to that?
I think it's important for the students to understand, whether they're graduate or undergraduate students, is this situation of being remote creates an opportunity for variations in examinations. So to not expect every single course to be identical, but what students will gain is direct information from their course outline and syllabus by each instructor. And that information will come available as you begin your courses and as the course outlines are presented to you. So the biggest piece is there will be variability, and that allows you to experience different approaches to examination and as an individual learner shine across different courses. And that information will come available in the beginning.
Speaking about some alternate formats, interestingly, that's bumped way up the list of questions, are questions around labs and physical experiments in science, and people being super interested in, will we not do the experiment and watch someone do it online? Question. Somebody says, P.S. loves chemistry, this person. So I felt like we had the perfect folks to address that question. Maybe either Professor Freeman or McNeil would like to champion that.
The answer to that question is, we're working on it. We've actually thrown a big pile of money at a host of graduate students and other very talented individuals who are currently designing the things that you're going to be doing in your chemistry experiments. You can't be here in person. You can't be in our laboratory spaces. You can't manipulate the glassware and the instrumentation. But we're coming up with and developing ways that will give you as much of that experience as possible. We're fooling around with what exactly that might look like, up to and including you log into a Zoom-like environment and direct a person who's in the lab wearing a GoPro on their head and doing all the stuff that you tell them to do, or watching little videos of the manipulations. We're going to be shifting the focus of what your activities will be away from the laboratory skills, because you can't be there in that room, to the analysis and the presentation and the interpretation of the data that you might have acquired when you were there. And we can certainly generate that data and give you that data and then walk you through and build up the skills about how to do that part of the science. As Tamara mentioned earlier, that's not ideal, but we're working really, really hard to try to figure out a way to bring as much of that experience to you. And I will say, this isn't just us having this conversation. I'm sure my colleagues in other disciplines are in the same boat. The chemistry education community across the world is grappling with this problem right now, and we're all talking to each other, and we're all writing papers, and we're all holding seminars, and we're all working together to figure out the best way to go about doing this. There's a ton of resources online that we're all stealing from each other and figuring out how to bring as much of the laboratory experience to you as we can, even in this environment. Tamara, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I might even state that I've had a lot of conversations with biology and geology over the summer about what they're planning on moving forward with in the upcoming semester. And a lot of us are looking at maybe creative ways that we can incorporate kitchen chemistry or kitchen biology. So the extraction of DNA from strawberries, finding household items that we can get you guys to use. So while we won't be able to use like an Erlenmeyer flask from the chemistry laboratory, we're going to try and find creative ways to get you to bring things from your house, from your environment, and try and explore some of those same types of experimental procedures and experiences. So we are very excited about, fingers crossed, making something like this happen. But yeah, we are doing our best to try and make it as experiential as we can. Sorry, those were my kids.
Speaking of experiential, Professor Freeman. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about that, but there's definitely a pivotal question coming up, and that's completely fair. We're here to talk about teaching, but when 29 people are asking about what student fees look like this year, it's kind of important that we don't ignore that question. And thanks very much to our AVP students who's agreed to address that. Michelle.
Yeah, happy to. So the question is, what will student fees look like this year? Will we still be required to pay for UPass and REC fees for term 1? So looking at the UPass is administered by the student union. And if you look on their website, those of you students out there, it's ubcsuo.ca/UPass. You'll see on there information around how it's assessed. There is an opt-out exemption for folks to go in and fill out the form. You can do that by September 29th. The thinking behind this is there are still a number of students in the Central Okanagan region that will be using the bus pass. So you're still able to get the UPass as part of your fees. And there will be that opportunity to opt out by the end of September. They've put on there an email address that if you've got any questions about it, you can certainly get in touch with them, upass@ubcsuo.ca. In terms of the rec fees for term 1, we haven't made any decisions about that at this point in time. Athletics facilities opened up last week. Rec facilities are opening up this week. So we haven't actually made a decision at this point in time around reduction in fees or what that's going to look like. Hopefully we will have a decision by mid-July.
It's really helpful. Thanks so much for that, Michelle. I see that there's a question that Dean Traster has volunteered to speak to, asking about some of the communication that might come from faculties, and that, when we went online in March, it was really difficult sometimes for the faculty to marshal a lot of communication out to students. So how are we going to make sure in the faculties, Dean Traster, that we're getting information out to students?
Thanks, Heather, and thank you for the question. It's a completely fair question, and I'm going to answer it from a very personal place, which was when I was teaching last term and was part of that sudden move from face-to-face to fully online instruction. And I myself, I think, dropped the ball a little bit in terms of staying in touch with my students, reassuring them, giving the right information as soon as I could in a timely way, clearly and effectively. Things that under normal operating circumstances, I like to think I'm reasonably good at, but that I wasn't actually great at when we moved so suddenly back in March from one to the other format. So it is something that I'm very concerned about. And I think that we have been, since the decision was made to be online in term 1 for fall 2020, I think we've been working very carefully and very assiduously towards maintaining good communication with students and with each other. Part of it is that we're kind of building the ship as we are steering it, and we're figuring this out as we're going along. And I'm really grateful to all of our new incoming students and continuing students for your patience as we try to develop the best learning experience for you in the fall term. As we are learning how to do that ourselves. One thing I can say as an evil dean is that there's absolutely no difference in terms of the expectation for faculty performance relative to the online learning environment as we have for the face-to-face teaching. You are coming to one of the best universities in the world, and the reason it is one of the best universities in the world is because of its faculty. And I have every confidence in our faculty's ability, many of whom you're meeting here, some of whom you're meeting today on this panel. I have complete confidence in their ability to give you a world-class education online or face-to-face. And my hope and my expectation for them will remain the same in the online environment as it does at all times. So you're going to come here, continue with us, and continue to have access to a world-class education, even if it's being delivered under slightly different circumstances.
I see that Professor McLean would like to say something about communication as well.
Yeah, I think I'm not a dean, but there's two differences from what happened when we did the sort of flip the switch move to remote learning. One is, of course, that really happened over a weekend. And so my colleagues were scrambling to implement something on the fly. We have time now. It's not a lot of time, but we have the summer and people are working, I think, very hard on that transition. And the second piece is invisible probably to the students, but not to the faculty, is the tremendous support network around us helping us do that. So we have sets of staff. So we have a Center of Teaching and Learning in the Okanagan campus, for example, which is headed by a super awesome person and a whole set of staff who are helping us think about the pedagogy and the development of our courses, the design of them. And then there's the tremendous IT staff who are helping us think through not just the technology, but many of them also have an eye to the pedagogical conversations they have with us about what we're trying to do and how to deliver it. So the resources of the institution are rapidly shifting to support this transition, and including thinking about students and your needs for access, stable access to the internet, etc. Those are all on the table. I happen to be one of our faculty representatives on our Board of Governors. It's certainly a core conversation going on at that level in the senior administration. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes that I think will make this, in fact, has the potential to make this a tremendously positive experience for both the faculty who are working their tails off, can I say that, to transform their courses, but also for the students, because I think the outcomes will be very strong.
Thanks so much for that. I have a question that I thought maybe I could push to one or both of our student panelists or alumna. And that is around how groups might get formed on Collaborate. There's been a number of questions about course execution and the things that might happen. And I thought perhaps something like how are groups formed? Maybe you'd be able to speak to your experience in forming groups and that kind of thing, using that synchronous, asynchronous. How did you plan your study group? How did you kind of manage some of those challenges in this environment? Maybe Jennifer or Dalton.
Sure. And Dalton, feel free to jump in at any point. It was actually on my list, but I talked too much, so I wasn't able to talk about it. There was a couple of different ways that it was formed, and I mean, there's the generic being assigned, and you have no choice, and you have to reach out, and you have to connect with those people, and that's always nice because it takes the pressure off, and it kind of mixes the group a bit. You're not always going to the people that you know, which is nice. My favorite, though, if professors ever have the opportunity to do this, was to either present a proposal or a category of interest, or to vote on a proposal or a category of interest, because then you really have that authentic buy-in on the student's part, because you're really wanting to study whatever topic has been put forward, and then you have the opportunity to align yourself with your classmates who are coming from similar backgrounds or similar fields. Maybe you guys will be doing your major all the way through now together, or working on a research project all the way through together. As for connecting and communicating, Dalton had talked about Slack, and you just get live updates. It's literally like messaging your buddies. You'll get little blurbs related to particular hashtags, themes, projects that you're working on, and you get pop-ups all the time, people asking quick questions. And then if you're asynchronous, with everybody scattered all over the place, you have the opportunity to answer right then and connect, or choose to answer it later. You'll find your groove is really what it is, and you'll find what you're comfortable with, and every class is going to be a little bit different. Dalton, I don't know, did you have any specific ways of getting together with your classmates that you recommend?
I was just going to speak to the group forming that I've experienced with my classes. So with my class that I had in the first summer term, we were presented with a list of topics that we were to do our project on. And we basically, Canvas has a groups function where you can group people together, and you're allowed to sign up for those groups. So basically what the instructor did is took the topics, created some empty groups for them, and allowed the students to sign up for them. And I think there was a limit of 4 to 5 students per group. So we had a group of 4. So 4 people, none of us knew each other beforehand, just signed up for this topic. And then we, when you're grouped together, you have your own version of the discussion boards and stuff like that. So the instructor was able to reach to us directly as a group without sort of having every single question that's very group focused go to everyone in the class. So that was really awesome. I really liked the fact that you had a choice and you weren't forced into a group, right? For the capstone project, actually what we did, there's I believe he's either a master's or doctor's student. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he has a program that takes a survey using Qualtrics, a UBC survey tool. And basically you take the survey and it forms the groups for you, trying to give everyone the best possible strengths and weakness matching so that you have a well-rounded group. So our capstone group was formed automatically with a survey tool, and then the other class was just choose your own group. And like you said, and like I said in my talk, we use Discord, we use a lot of Zoom. Zoom is great to screen share and be able to talk, and everyone is able to connect to it. There's some problems with different services like FaceTime and stuff like that in other international countries, but I know that Zoom has worked great with all of our international students that we've worked with. So yeah.
Hey, I'm a first-year student and haven't started yet. You guys keep talking about this Canvas thing. What's Canvas? Anybody would like to maybe take that? Professor Friedman?
As the first-year coordinator for chemistry, Canvas is your learning management system program. So one of the things that I remember when I first came to UBC was this: you have your Novell password, your CTL password, you have all these acronyms and all these things. Your campus-wide login, or your CWL, is your username and password that you use across campus for many services. So what you'll do is you'll log into our learning management system. Basically, it's the Facebook page of your courses as you're taking your classes. So you'll log into what we call Canvas, and you'll have all your different desktop courses listed there, and you'll meet on your Canvas platform with your instructors, or maybe they'll transition to Zoom. But that's where you'll do your synchronous learning, and you'll go there for all of your other course material. For my first-year students, I plan on spending probably the first 1 or 2 classes teaching everyone how to use the platform, guiding them through what my expectations are for where to look for material and how to answer quizzes. We're going to go step by step so that everyone knows exactly how my first-year classes are planned to work.
That's really helpful. Thanks so much, Professor Friedman. There are a number of questions that are coming that are really specific about student issues. And so I just wanted to thank in advance Michelle, who's going to speak a little bit, I think, about student advising and how you access student advising, because they can help you answer some of those questions. And then perhaps I'll ask Professor Mukherjee if she can speak a little bit to some of the registration questions. Thanks so much. So Michelle?
Perfect. Yes, I'm happy to answer this. So for those of you that don't know, on the Okanagan campus, we have a centralized advising model. You won't be assigned an academic advisor. You are free to contact an academic advisor. So if you're in the School of Engineering, you are going to want to go to the, it's soeadvising.ok.ubc.ca. And you will be able to set an appointment with an advisor that will speak to you specifically about your engineering courses. If you're not an engineer, we have a team of academic advisors that can work with you. So for those of you that are posting questions around how many courses do you think I should take, what are some good courses for first year science or first year arts, what are electives, you want to Google that advising page. Right now, all of the academic advisors are doing drop-ins only. So that's to be able to help the high numbers of students that are contacting advising right now. It is best to wait for an advisor, so join the queue. I've looked, the queue has lots of students in it today, so they're working through that queue. And I believe it's been closed for now. It will open up again tomorrow. I would recommend you get in there quite early. The advisors will contact you by phone and be able to walk you through any of the questions that you have about that you're posting here, any of those questions around electives. They can also, actually, why don't I point you to, I would recommend any first year student go to the first year advising guides. So we've developed first year advising guides for all first year programs. And look at the FAQs on there. A lot of your questions could be answered by looking at those FAQs first. Some of the questions actually that you're posting will be answered by looking at some of the first year advising guides in the FAQs on that website. Yeah, that's all I have to say actually about advising at this point.
I just noticed that Professor McNeil raised his hand, so he may have something to add on the topic of advising.
Not on that. It took me a while to get up to speed on the last question. Heather, do you think it would be helpful for me to share a screen of what a Canvas interface might look like?
If I think we have a minute, and then I'll pass it over for some questions about registrations. It might be interesting for some of our students to
So the idea is there's a website, and you should bookmark it in your browser as soon as you figure out where it is, and you log in with the same name and password you're going to use to access basically everything at UBC. And when you open it up, you'll get something that kind of looks like this. And this is what I see. Your instructor has a lot of control over how a given course is going to appear when you hit the homepage. You have a bit of control over what it's going to look like, but you have a big long list of all of your courses that are all going to be loaded up here. And then when you click through to one of them specifically, a bunch of information is going to show up. Depending on how your instructor has arranged it, there might be a tab for announcements that are rolling by. Here are things that are going on that you need to know about. Here's where the review notes are. Here's the updated deadline for the new assignment. There's definitely going to be a page that shows you a version of the course syllabus and all the information you need to know about how the course is going to run. There's a calendar feature embedded in this so that all the deadlines and all of the quiz dates and everything that you need to know about how that course is progressing are going to be there. There are probably going to be specific modules that the instructor has set up so that it's broken down by week or by topic, and then you drill into a particular thing and okay, there's everything I need to know about the third topic in the course. They're all laid out. Different ways to set this up and to disseminate this information to you. There's also a link to your course grades, and so you can go in and you can see if courses are progressing and what your standing in the course is. So it's basically your one-stop shop for all of your information about all of the online activities in all of your courses through a single module, and including opportunities to do group work, to do discussions, and then a link to Collaborate Ultra, which is actually the thing that we're going to be using for our video streaming for many of our courses. So that's what that looks like. It's an online course management tool that lets you see everything you need to see about how all your courses are running.
Thanks so much for taking that, Professor McNeil. That's really helpful. A number of the questions that have risen to the top are about registration, when blocked courses might be open or required courses seem not to be running in certain sessions, as well as, what do we know about term 2? So maybe I will allow Professor Mukherjee-Reed, if she doesn't mind, to just address a few of those as maybe our last formal question.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the panelists and Heather for moderating this wonderful session. I feel I would like to go back to school. There are 3 groups of people we haven't talked about a lot today, and I just want to say thank you to them. One is your parents, the new and continuing students whose parents and families continue to place the faith on us to educate you. This is a great honor for us, and despite COVID, despite all our challenges, we will try to live up to that faith and honor as best as we can. Mark talked about the staff, and I really do want to say that the people who are working behind the scenes in every sector of the university, and they are kind of 24/7. Tamara mentioned the holding office hours at 9 o'clock. Yes, people are absolutely doing that. And then the students. So I think Stephen mentioned that we are hiring students in particular programs, through particular programs, to work with professors on designing courses and on helping students and faculty with the technological needs. And we are just in the process of developing some kind of a peer program where students can work with students to help them succeed in the online world. So students, staff, faculty, parents, everybody is at work for success here. And I'm very, very honored to be part of this team. On registration, 4th-year students should have received a message from me through the student information system, which says that we will be able to reopen July 6th with removing some of the blockages and challenges that you encountered, particularly with course conflict. So that's the date we are looking at for July 6th. First-year students have received their registration date, and with some there are some challenges there, but mostly it is proceeding as per the date. Second year and third year students are yet to receive their registration dates, and they will receive it as soon as we can resolve some challenges. And we want to resolve them before we send you the registration date so that you don't have a difficult experience. Beyond that, as we close, you are going to see a link to a web page which is for students COVID-19, but it is, you have sets of questions which are divided by your concerns. Please look at that, and there are also email addresses there where you can contact people with specific questions, including the link to your faculties. Please make use of that. This town hall will also be recorded and posted, so everything that you saw today you can see again. And what I'm hearing is we might need to have more town halls so that we can have you experience our stellar professors firsthand, more of them, and ask them more of your questions directly. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. And I can't believe time flew this quickly, but it did. We are at time. It is noon. So I want to thank all of our panelists for their time and for their contributions. It's much appreciated. I know people deeply appreciated it by 80 questions rolling in. A reminder that link will take you to information for those very specific questions that we received. And thanks to everyone for participating today. We're looking forward to seeing many of you online in September. So thanks very much.